It was early fall, the kind of weather that couldn't make up its mind. Cold in the morning, warm by noon, then freezing once the sun dipped. I'd taken a few days off work, packed my gear, and drove out to a lesser known trailhead a few hours north. No people, no surveys, just quiet. Exactly what I needed. I arrived at the woods just before dusk, the sky bleeding warm oranges and the purples through the thinning trees. The air had that crisp early fall chill, the kind that made you breathe fog just enough to remind you that winter wasn't far off. I parked at a remote trailhead, shouldered my pack, and I started hiking in. I'd done this plenty of times before. I wasn't some weekend warrior looking for a thrill, just a guy who needed a few nights away from the noise of everyday life. Out here, there was no phone buzzing, no traffic, no one demanding my time. Just the woods, the wind, and the quiet. A few miles in, I found a solid spot to set up camp. Flat ground, a little clearing, just far enough from the main trail that I wouldn't see another soul. This trail was obscure, barely even marked on most maps. I pitched my tent, got a fire going, and settled in. As the sun dipped below the trees, the forest came alive with the usual nighttime sounds, the distant hoot of an owl, the rustling of small critters in the underbrush. Nothing unusual. But then at some point, the sound stopped, and that's when I saw him, a kid, standing just at the edge of the trees, barefoot, wearing a faded blue jacket that swallowed his small frame. His hair was matted, his skin pale, almost grayish. He didn't look lost, just waiting. For a long moment, we just stared at each other. Something about him made my stomach twist, though I couldn't say why. Maybe it was the way he didn't move, didn't shift his weight, didn't fidget, didn't even blink. I called him, keeping my voice light, and asked if he's okay. I got no response. I stood brushing dirt off my jeans. Are your parents around? Still, no response. A creeping discomfort prickled at the back of my neck. Kids don't just stand in the woods alone at this time. I tried again and asked where he lives, taking a small step forward. At that, he finally moved. He turned, not walking away, not running, just slowly rotating his body before stepping back into the trees, and for some damn reason I followed. I don't know how long I trailed behind him, but the deeper we went, the stranger everything felt. Then through the gloom I saw it. A cabin. It was ancient, sagging into the earth like it had been forgotten by time. Moss covered the roof and the wooden walls were dark with rot. No sign of life, no footprints. The boy stepped onto the porch and pushed the door open. I hesitated. Something inside me screamed, "No, don't do this." But I followed. The inside was empty. No furniture, no dust. Just raw wooden floors and a strange damp well. The only thing in there was a rusted iron stove, cold and unused, and the carvings. They covered the walls, thousands of marks, deep scratches in the wood. Not symbols, not words, just lines. Like tallies. What is this place? The boy moved to the center of the room and knelt. That's when I saw it. The trapdoor. It wasn't part of the floorboards. It was older. The wood darker, the edges carved with something almost decorative or ritualistic. My chest tightened. I told him that we should go. He placed his small dirty hands on the woods, and he whispered, "They're waiting." And he pulled it open. I don't remember what happened next. One moment I was staring into the black hole, feeling something move beneath the floor, hearing whispers rise from the dark. Then I woke up in my tent. Morning light filtered through the nylon. Birds chirped outside. The world felt normal. For a long minute I just lay there breathing. Had it been a dream? A hallucination? Maybe I'd eaten something bad, gotten dehydrated. I unzipped the tent and stepped out, and my stomach dropped. The fire pit was gone. My footprints, my campsite, everything gone. It was like I had never been there. I packed up quickly and hiked back to my car, checking over my shoulder more times than I'd like to admit. I kept expecting to see the kid again standing off the trail, but I didn't. Back home, I tried to shake it off. I told myself it was just to be a dream, that maybe I'd wandered off and slept somewhere else without remembering. But something about it wouldn't leave me alone. I started searching. I didn't even know what I was looking for. News articles, missing persons, folklore about strange kids in the woods. Nothing came up. Until I found a photo. It was buried in an old forum. Some deep corner of the internet where hikers share strange encounters. The post was from over 30 years ago. Some guy talking about a boy he saw in the woods. A boy in a faded blue jacket. The photo was grainy, old, but I knew it was him. Same face, same blank stare, and below the photo, a single comment. Don't speak to him, don't follow him, and whatever you do, don't let him know your name. I sat back, stomach twisting. I'd never told him my name. Had I? I closed the laptop, stood up, and looked out of my window. The street outside was empty, quiet. But suddenly I had the strangest feeling, like I wasn't alone, like something was watching, like something had followed me back. I locked every door in my apartment that night, blocked the windows, and I made a decision. I would never go back to those woods. I would never set foot on that trail again, and I would never, not for any reason, go looking for that boy, because I knew deep down he might come looking for me. I was taking a road trip in my Jeep Cherokee from Kentucky to West Virginia to visit my brothers. I always keep emergency supplies in the back: water, tools, even a sleeping bag, just in case. I had decided to take the back trails through the Appalachian wilderness. There was something about driving those winding tree-covered roads with the windows down, feeling the crisp mountains air rush in. It was the kind of road where the cell service was non-existent, and the only sign of life were the occasional deer darting into the woods. I was pushing the Jeep a little harder than I should have, climbing a steep, rocky incline when I heard a deep knocking from under the hood. The engine sputtered, and within mountains the Jeep began to jolt violently before cutting out completely. I slammed the brakes to keep from rolling backward, and the vehicle came to a stop on a narrow stretch of road with nothing but dense forest on either side. I popped the hood, not that I had any real clue what I was looking at. No smoke, no obvious leaks, just a dead engine. I got back inside and turned the key, hoping for a miracle, but the Jeep wouldn't start. Then it hit me. No phone service, no way to call for help, and I hadn't seen another car for well over an hour. I sat on the hood for a while, drinking water and waiting. The sun dipped lower, and shadows stretched across the road. Then finally, the distant rumble of an engine broke the silence. Headlights crested over the hill, and I jumped to my feet, waving my arms. The vehicle sped past me without even slowing down. I cursed under my breath. How could someone just leave another person stranded like that? As the sky darkened and the cold set in, I checked my bag. I had no food. Every snap of twig made me flinch. Then at last, another set of headlights appeared in the distance. I got to my feet, waving again, more desperately this time. The truck slowed and pulled to the side. A man stepped out. He was tall, broad shoulders, wearing a heavy jacket and a worn-out cap. "Car trouble?" he asked. I nodded. "Yeah, she just died on me. Won't start back up. You know anything about cars?" He didn't answer right away. Instead, he looked me up and down, then glanced at my Jeep. "You out here alone?" he asked. The question made me uneasy. "No, my brothers are expecting me soon." I lied. "I was just about to hike back to get service." He stared at me for a long moment before finally saying, "I can give you a ride." Something about him felt off. But I didn't have many options. I grabbed my backpack, making sure to keep my pocket knife within reach, and climbed into the truck. We drove in silence for a few minutes before he started asking me more questions. "Why'd you take this road? Ain't many folks come this way." I said I just like the scenery. He laughed at me. A few minutes later, the truck slowed. He cursed under his breath and pulled off to the side. "Damn thing's acting up. Pop the hood for me." My stomach sank. Every instinct told me something was wrong. I climbed out but didn't go straight for the hood. I waited, I listened. Then I heard it, the soft shift of the gear stick. I jumped back just as the truck roared forward, tires kicking up gravel where I had just been standing. If I reacted half a second later, I'd be dead. I ran. The darkness of the woods swallowed me, branches slashing my arms and face. Behind me I heard the truck door slam, followed by the sound of heavy boots on dirt, then gunshots. I threw myself to the ground, covering my head as bullets whizzed past. I didn't move, barely breathed. The footsteps slowed, then stopped. Then I heard him spit. Before heading back to his truck, the engine revved, and the truck rumbled away, disappearing into the night. I stayed hidden for what felt like hours before exhaustion took over, and I drifted into an uneasy sleep. The nightmare ended at dawn, when another pickup came along, driven by an old couple. They stopped the moment they saw me, dirty, shaking, covered in scratches. They gave me water, wrapped me in a blanket, and drove me to the nearest town where I called for a tow. It was a long, nerve-wracking ride back to my Jeep, then an even longer haul to get it to a mechanic. That was the worst trip of my life. When a man tries to run you over and shoot you, that's not something you just get over. My name's Jack, and a while back I decided to go on a solo camping trip in the woods, a few miles from my house. I set up my tent, had something to eat, and then took a quick nap before heading out for a hike. The forest was quiet, almost too quiet, but nothing felt off at first. That was until I heard footsteps. Now I know what you're thinking. Probably just an animal, right? That's what I told myself too. But these footsteps, they sounded human. And considering how deep I was into the woods, far from any town or trails, that was weird. Still, I didn't go searching for whoever it was. I just kept hiking and eventually made my way back to camp. The first thing I noticed when I returned, my tent. The zipper was undone and the flap was wide open. My stomach dropped. Someone had been inside. I checked the tent, my heart pounding the whole time, but no one was there. All the stuff was scattered, but nothing was missing. I thought about packing up and moving somewhere else. Honestly, what was the point? If someone had already been here, they'd seen everything and taken nothing. No reason to come back, right? That night, after climbing into my sleeping bag, I was just about to drift off when I heard it. A noise. The first time I wasn't sure what it was. The second time though, it was clearer. It sounded like breathing, but not normal breathing. It was grainy, almost like static. I sat up listening, my heart racing. Then silence. I tried to brush it off and I laid back down. Not even 10 seconds later, the sound was back. That weird staticky breathing. I panicked, dug through my bag, and that's when I found it. Something I was absolutely sure I didn't bring with me. It was an old, massive walkie-talkie looking thing, and the static was coming from it. My stomach twisted. Whoever had been here before must have left it. But why? Just then, the static stopped, replaced by slow, heavy breathing. And then in deep, chilling whisper I heard, "I'm not your cat." Now, I don't know about you, but when you hear something like that coming from a creepy old radio in the middle of the woods, you don't sit around to figure out what's next. My entire body went cold. I started frantically pressing buttons on the thing until it finally turned off. Then I heard it. Something heavy hitting the ground outside my tent. My mind was racing. I had two choices, stay put and defend myself or make a run for my truck. Then another sound. Something else hitting the ground. That was it. I wasn't sticking around to see what happened next. I grabbed my truck keys and bolted. Left behind my tent, sleeping bag, gear, everything. None of it mattered. My only goal was getting the hell out of here. As I peeled out of the campsite and back onto the main road, my thoughts were running wild. Was it some twisted prank, a trap to get me to abandon my stuff? Or was it something worse? To this day I have no idea. But I do know one thing. I'm never going camping alone again.